Hi, my name is Aya. You're watching Aya Reads, and I'm here to talk about all the books I hated in 2023. So there's only 8 here, which is good because right now, at the point of filming this, I read over 160 books this year. So the fact that it's less than 10, that means I had a very good read. Before I get started, I do have to say some things, obviously. First of all, some of the books I'm going to talk about are by some of my favorite authors, so I'm definitely not bashing these authors at all. I didn't like their book, which obviously authors write several different books in their lifetimes. You're bound to not love all of them. And if some of these are your favorite, I'm sorry, but I mean, to each his own. Not everybody's gonna love the same books. Some of my favorite books you might hate, so please don't take offense. It's just all in good fun. And yeah, these are all the books I gave 1 and 2 stars. So yeah, I didn't really love them. And these are also books that I have like strong opinions on. Let me actually start with the 2 stars. Yeah. The first one is Tsta Season for Revenge. This actually makes me sad to talk about because I know a lot of people really loved this book last year. This is a Christmas romance. I know it was very hyped last year. It was in fact, I have like this running list of books that keep getting recommended, and this was the highest up for my like Christmas list. So I do know, like I went in with very high expectations, and unfortunately it was a 2-star book. I really couldn't connect to the main character. I felt like this man was way too perfect, which made him unrealistic to me. The fact that he kept throwing out terms of endearment that meant soulmate after one day just kept me rolling my eyes. The sex scenes in here were not like, I just didn't enjoy them, which usually I love reading smutty scenes, and this is like one of the first times where I actually skim read those scenes because I couldn't care, honestly. I understood why she fell in love with him because her background was very well developed. Like I knew all her issues, so it was easy that he was like the fix. But the other way around, I just didn't understand. I'm sure he also has some things in his past. I mean, he's way older, so I'm pretty sure that he has had some things in his past that she filled all the voids for, yet that was never explained to me. Ultimately, it was just not my type of book. I didn't enjoy it. I did really love the revenge aspect though. Like I love the petty shit that she did to her ex. I didn't even tell you what this is about. Anyway, this is about a woman who has been dating this man for 4 years, and she thinks he's it for her. She thinks that he's gonna propose and they're gonna get married and have babies, or not have babies, that they're gonna get married, until he dumps her before taking her to his law firm's Halloween party because he thinks that she's childish. She dressed up as a bunny and he thinks it's very childish to dress up at a Halloween dress-up party. She decides to get revenge on him in all types of different ways, and she also wants to date again. And those two goals of her interconnect when she finds his boss on one of the dating apps. So she thinks, what better way to get revenge is by sleeping with my ex's boss who he hates and getting his boss to take me to his annual Christmas party that my ex never took me to. Like I said, I really loved those revenge aspects. But one thing that really bothered me throughout this book was how much she was lying to him. And I think that it was just a cop-out every time she wanted to tell him and then found a flaky reason why she ended up not telling him, and that just happened way too many times for me to really root for this main character. Next is A Sanctuary with Kings by Catherine Moon, and this once again also makes me very sad because The Lady of Rooksgrave Manor, which is the first book in the series, I gave 5 stars, and I actually gave the second book 4 stars, and this one was a 2-star. I just didn't enjoy it. Basically, this is a series. This is the final book in the series, and each book follows a different white shoes romance. So this one is one woman with 4 different monsters. And I just didn't enjoy it. Once again, I couldn't connect to this main character. I didn't like her. One of the men in this, or one of the monsters in this reverse harem, also really annoyed me. The one that she actually met first, and the one that I was very excited about after having read the novella before this novel. I didn't enjoy the setting in this book because in the first book, it actually takes place at this brothel, and the second book takes place at this theater, whereas this book only took place at this house. So that's not interesting to me at all, because in the first 2 books, I actually enjoyed seeing other people or like other couples as well, or other type of smutty scenes, whereas this book, it was solely centered on these 5 people. And also what I didn't enjoy is this book was very depressing, which I get because Avanthia went through so much, like such horrible things in her life, but if I compare it to The Lady of Rooksgrave Manor, that was just like a fun, smutty, good time. And that is why I was reading this series. And ultimately, I felt like the series just turned into something that's completely different from where we started. I just didn't like that because that is not why I started reading the series. And I felt like at one point, like the plot in here was also not interesting. With Brisha, like he's the villain of this story. Obviously, we've been working up to defeating him ever since the first book. I felt like that was anticlimactic as well. Plus, there was this Arthurian legend shoehorned in that I just didn't enjoy also. Like that didn't make any sense to me whatsoever, and I kind of skim read those chapters. And there was a bunch of Fade to Black in here, which it's a white choose romance. That made no sense. Why have a white choose romance if you're gonna have Fade to Black? Like, what is the point of a white choose romance if not for like more men to have more sex with? Like, that is like, honestly, if we're gonna bring it back to base level, that is the only reason to write a white choose, is to write more creative smutty scenes. And like, at the end of the day, even the cameos we got from the white choose romances in the first and second book didn't save this book for me, so it was 2 stars. I would say just read the first 2 and move on with your life, honestly. The next 2 books I'm actually going to talk about actually technically unhauled. I'll leave my unhaul video for you linked, but I haven't gotten around to actually removing them from my house, so I figured let's just use them for this video then. First is The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender. This one I read for my video of reading books I bought in my first ever book haul, which I'll leave linked for you as well. This one I had such high hopes for because everybody that read it at the time really loved it. Let me see when this was published. It was published in 2014. This was the one I had the highest hopes for all the books that were in that book haul that I had not read yet. So this is a magical realism, and that is just very difficult for me to love those books. I don't understand that. Like, I need, if you're gonna have magic in your books, which I love magic, I love fantasy books, but it needs to be explained to me. Whereas with magical realism, like the whole point of it is that it's not explained, which I didn't love. Plus, this is called The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender. Ava only comes in at about the last third of this book. Like, this was mostly her grandmother's story first and foremost, and then a little bit of her mother's story. At the end of the day, I just didn't care about these characters. In fact, a lot of horrible things happened to Ava and her mom, and also her grandma, and I couldn't bring myself to care at all. Yeah, it was very hard for me to get through this, even though it was only 300 pages. This is just not for me. Unless you really love magical realism, I don't think you're gonna miss out by not reading this book. Next is A Million Junes by Emily Henry. So I read this book for my Emily Henry vlog, which I'll leave linked for you, and this is one of her 2 young adult books that I read in that vlog. And I have to say, I'm very glad Emily Henry has stopped writing these books and started writing her contemporary romances, because obviously she has gotten way more success doing that. Plus, I feel like her contemporary romances are so much better than what she did in her young adult books. So this is another magical realism story, which I'm sure is part of the reason why I didn't really love this one. So this is a love story that's like a Romeo-Juliet type love story of 2 feuding families, and I didn't feel like these 2 had any chemistry whatsoever. I didn't feel like June's character was fleshed out, and I didn't think Sal's character was fleshed out at all. Like, I didn't know these people at all. Like, I could walk down the street and I would know a thing. Sorry to these people. Also, the way it was resolved, I thought this was actually going to be a 3-star throughout the majority of this book, but the way it was so easily resolved and everything, even though this feud was going on for generations, was also laughable to me. And yeah, like, there were storylines in here about her being an author or really being good at writing that never went anywhere. So I figured, like, why have that in there at all? Like, I read this during the summer, and I actually had to watch my vlog, my Emily Henry vlog, where I read this one to really solidify all my thoughts now, because this was so forgettable. I haven't thought about this book ever since I finished it. So yeah, not my favorite. One I'm very sad about, because I really do love this author, and in fact, one of the other books in this series is actually in my favorite books of the year, and it's The Savage by Sophie Lark. This one I gave 2 stars, and I really honestly feel like she should never have written this. Like, I felt like The Kingmakers was such a strong series. The first 4 books have such a good story arc, a story arc that she clearly thought through and clearly plotted out very well. And this was just an add-on that was not necessary. This follows Sabrina and Audric, and they meet in the fourth book, which I cannot tell you anything about that fourth book because all of that fourth book are spoilers. Basically, this takes place right after the events of the fourth book, like I said. Both of them are part of mafia families, and Sabrina decides to go to Russia to be with her boyfriend, who she only met a couple weeks ago, I'm pretty sure. Like, they had not been dating a long, like, they had like this amazing sexual night, and then she decides to give up all her plans for him. So like I said, I do feel like their first meeting was explosive. I did enjoy that, and after that I hated a lot of this book. I hated the way she was in Russia. She is supposed to be such a smart character, but everything in this book she did was so dumb. I don't like these kinds of characters. She's volatile. She does things without thinking, even though, like I said, she's supposed to be very smart. I didn't enjoy her character at all. And him, he was fine, but he was also not one of my favorite characters, especially having read so many great main male characters from Sophie Lark. There was this whole plot line in here where she gets her revenge on him, and I felt like it made me so uncomfortable at one point to read that. Like, that went way too overboard. And even though her father is supposed to be this volatile character, I don't think he would ever do the things she did. And honestly, by the end of this book, even though this was supposed to be a romance, I honestly think that I would not care if either of them died. So, I mean, if that doesn't tell you anything, then I don't know what else to tell you, because obviously in a romance, you're supposed to be rooting for the happily ever after. I wasn't rooting for them to have a happily ever after. In fact, I wasn't even rooting for them to live. So if that doesn't, like, I think that perfectly explains what I feel about this book. And this is even more heartbreaking because I know Sophie Lark can do better, because I've read better books by her. Like, just to name a few, I prefer her father's book over her book. I prefer every single book I've read by Sophie Lark over her book. In fact, this is the only 2-star book I've ever given a Sophie Lark. Every other book I've given either 3, 4, or 5 stars. Yeah, this was just not it. And honestly, if you want to read Sophie Lark and the Kingmakers, I would say just skip this book, because honestly, this doesn't add anything to that story. I feel like if you just read The Heir, The Savage, The Bully, and The Spy, that is a very satisfying arc. In fact, The Spy has epilogues for every single character that you've come to know and love about, even Sabrina. The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. So I actually read this one at the beginning of the year. I was really in the mood for a mystery, and this was just not it. Basically, you follow this man who wakes up in a different body, and he has to solve this mystery of who killed Evelyn Hardcastle. I believe he has like the whole day in one body, and then he wakes up in a different one, and each person he's in knows something different about this murder. I have to say, I did enjoy the beginning of this story. Like, I like the fact that he was in a different body, and I like the setting, like this mansion and this historical setting, and him trying to figure things out. The reveal of this mystery made no sense, and I didn't care about. The main character was pretty unlikable, and I also didn't understand why Evelyn Hardcastle was so special and why we needed to save her. Like, before getting to the reveal, obviously the reveal tells you a little bit about why we needed to solve this mystery, but as far as from the main character's point of view, I just, like, he was like almost in love with her, and I didn't understand why. Yeah, there was this like whole fat shaming thing that also kind of made me uncomfortable, and at the end of the day, it was also very long, and I get why, because obviously you have, like, you're repeating the same day with different characters. I just feel like that could have been a little bit condensed. Yeah, I didn't enjoy this one. And now for my 2 1-star reads. Like I said, I did have a good reading year, because if I only had 2 1-star reads. The first one is Meet Me at the Lake by Carly Fortune. So I read this one for my Goodreads Choice Awards, reading the romance category. So I'll leave that link for you, because I go into way more detail. You can see in real time why I hate this book. Basically, in this book, you follow Fern, and she had this like magical whirlwind day with this guy named Will, and they promised each other that they would meet at her mother's lakeside resort a year later, but he never shows up. And now, 10 years later, he finally shows up, and they have to confront their feelings and see what they want to do about their future, stuff like that. This love story was not believable to me at all. I feel like the only reason why these two loved each other was because of looks and not because of personality, because the only thing Fern ever tells us about Will is how hot he is. And even in the flashbacks, it's all tell and not show, because she tells us that they had these like beautiful conversations, like these conversations that made her realize who she really is as a person. We never really saw that, and if we did, it was like very glossed over. What I didn't understand about this book, about this magical day, it was like a regular day to me, like a regular, almost pandemic day to me. Like they were exploring the city, going on a walk basically. And I just didn't understand why these flashbacks. Like you literally had one chapter in the present and one in the past, and the past was all revolved around this one day. I just didn't care about these two. I thought Will never won me over. I thought he was a flaky man, and I just didn't care. And that is because of Fern. Because if she told us a little bit more about why he's such a good guy, I would have understood. And then the third act conflict was just like, Fern was the most pathetic character throughout this entire book, and then the third act, just when I thought she couldn't be any more pathetic, she proved me wrong. So yeah, I didn't enjoy this book, and I don't think Carly Fortune is the author for me. And last is The Alchemist. So this one I read at the very beginning of the year, and this has been very hyped for me. Like a lot of people have read this book and have seemed to love it, and this book has been recommended over and over again throughout the year. So I figured let's just finally read it. It's a short book. I'll fly through it. No such luck. I didn't fly through it at all. Even though this was, I believe it was around 200 pages, it took me so long to read because I just couldn't care. I couldn't care about this character. I couldn't care about his quest. Basically, it's about this guy who wants to travel the world and find, like, I don't even remember what this book was about. All I know was that it was boring. And once again, like magic, whenever it's convenient, I don't like those kinds of stories. This also pretty religious, or at least that it felt like that way, and I also don't really love to read about religion. So yeah, honestly, I have forgotten a lot about this book, but I just know that I didn't care. I remember finishing it and I was like, I really don't care about this book or about this character. So 1 star, and these were my 8 books I hated in 2023. Definitely let me know in the comments below if you agree with any of these, or if you disagree, definitely let me know. Please be respectful about it though. And I would really love to know some of the books that you hated, that you read in 2023. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Definitely let me know by leaving a like if you did. And thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.